5 minutes. So you decide if it's a 50-50 split or who gets the most, okay? So, Jakarta, please let us know, what did you talk about in your conversations?
Um, yes, I will give our uh, aperture to Mubarak directly because he just waiting from the beginning. Mubarak.
Okay. Yeah, good morning for those in Europe and everywhere, if it's morning, and good afternoon for the folks in Jakarta. So I'm Mubarak, today serving as Rudy's assistant to present what we have been discussing this morning. We have two, the other one from Pak Astono from Parisada Hindu. So we have been listening to two perspectives. One is on wildlife trade from Islamic perspective mostly, and the second part is how the Hindu religion look into the taking care of nature, basically. So Rudy started with a rather depressing facts that currently wildlife trade is still widespread and even getting worse with the rise of the internet. People are now even selling wildlife through Facebook, Instagrams, WhatsApp group, etc. So globally, the values of this wildlife trade is estimated to be up to 23 billion US dollar per year. Scary numbers. And then countries in Asia has been seen as the primary source of this trade, but also the primary users or buyers of this of wildlife. Um, this in the context of Islamic teaching, Rudy has actually pioneered this work against the wildlife trade way sometimes ago, starting about the year 2000. He promoted the charter that is called the Bogor Charter on Faith and Biodiversity. So starting from that, there has been some increasing effort to fight wildlife trade uh, from the policy points of view as well as from the movement at the various religious groups on the ground. This issue has also been taught through schools, etc. Then some of the what they call the conservation clerics or dai konservasi. So a few imams and these clerics has been trained to convey the messages about encouraging people to stop consuming wildlife trade, wildlife as well as taking it as a pet. Moving on to the second presentation, Pak Astono, whom I believe is one of the priests of the Hindu religion here, um, he explained about the Hindu approach toward taking care of nature. There are two major principles, which is it's called Palemahan and Satkati. Let me summarize what it is. Well, basically, the Hindu teaching started from mandating people to uh, think correctly, to uh, to um, to use the correct words, and to behave correctly. Those are the basics. And then there are three balances that you need to keep in life. They call it Trihita Karana, which means the first one is about maintaining a harmony of relationship with God. The second one is with the same with your peer human being, and the third one is with nature. And along that line, there are a couple more specific values that are being taught and practiced through Hindu teaching and culture in Indonesia, especially in Bali. And in Bali, there are two exemplary cases, examples in which people are living it in their daily life. The first one is in the small community of the village of Tenganan. This is one of the oldest villages in Bali. This is one of the things that I remember is that this place has a daily public consultations process since 2,000 years ago.
Wow.
Something that you should remember. And then, but also with that, they take care of everything, every problems every day, they resolve it. And to a larger extent, these values of Hindu practice is also, to my knowledge, is being practiced in another city-type communities, which is in Ubud area of Bali, a rather touristic but also modern city, small modern city, but it still keep the values. But what does it say? Oh, well, the key to this adoption, the key to the... Okay,
Mubarak.
1 more minute.
No, that is your time, but I give you the final sentence to finish
Okay,
up.
yeah. Okay, the key to this intactness of the Hindu teaching in Bali context is the flexibility for adoptions in the local context.
Okay, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us that insight into your conversations and also these specific religious examples or examples of where the nexus of where faith meets environment and climate change issues. That seems like fruitful discussion and exchange. And if you do have any material, for example, Dr. Rudy, if you have any material that you shared with your hub session, it would be great if we could post that onto the Padlet platform so that can be shared with others in the global hubs as well. So thank you so much from Jakarta. I'm going to swiftly move on to, do we have Zevada? Do we have rapporteurs? And again, thank you, Mubarak. Do we have rapporteurs for Sarajevo? Och Bengt, du kan muta mig sen när de väl kör igång.
Yes, now you can hear me. I'm sorry.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Yes. I was designed to be the rapporteur for Sarajevo. So if I may share our discussion that we had yesterday. Hello, everybody. First of all, here in Sarajevo, it is very sunny. Early in the morning, 8 o'clock. The focus in Sarajevo was how to mobilize youth, how to mobilize young faith leaders for environmental action. And we really had, even if the size of the participants was reduced due to the virus here and due to lots of restrictions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the number of participants was as well much less than we expected. But nevertheless, the discussion was very fruitful and we really enjoyed it. So during the discussion, what came out? That talking is very important, having lectures on issues and environmental issues, but at the same time, action must be there as well. So talking only about the link of ethics, morals, environment, the Quran or Bible or religious sources and environment, this is necessary and must be continued, but an action must follow. This one thing. Then peer motivation is very important, that students, high school students, university students, peers motivate each other, make environmental action cool. And this is done particularly with the help of social media. So if you put this on social media, if you say thumbs up for an action that deals with the environment, cleaning the green surfaces, cleaning waters, collecting waste, attending lectures on this, if this is considered to be cool, then this is something that is worth spending your time. And as well, one thing was that competition among schools, among classes, among youth organizations important, that we have programs where they compete with each other, but in a positive way, competed with each other, what they have done in terms of environmental action. Educational system is important. We had one teacher of biology of Islamic high school who said that biology is taught in a very in a way that is not useful for today's challenges. So the idea was as well from the University of Sarajevo, from our participants, to establish adequate teaching plans for biology and to include very much more environmental issues. Yes, so this was about the discussion. Then when we looked on challenges, what are the challenges? There's a huge list, and I'm afraid that my time will not allow me to explain all of it. But coordination of actors has been mentioned, of actors working with youth. Is very important, so that we don't have individual, that we coordinate those activities to use synergies. That very often youth is excluded from decision-making processes, that we need to include youth and hear much more their voice. And very often we have as well that government policy might be, so to say, de jure, might be adopted, but then when de facto, when we need to apply this on the ground, then this is missing. We have as well to think that there are many one-time events which has been realized, which were great, but we do not have sustainability. So there's no continuity. So this is important. If we have one good idea which was successful, we should find a way to make it sustainable, to continue with this initiative. Financial help is as well necessary, but shouldn't be an obstacle. I think this is the main, in terms of challenges, not to repeat myself, in terms of possibilities. So youth is very much willing and committed as long as it's...
One more minute.
One more minute.
Thank you.
So youth is passionate, youth has lots of energy, they're ready, they're willing. This is a huge possibility and opportunity. They are much more capable to use these modern technologies. And we have also already their networks which we can use as well for other youth networks that we can use as well for environmental issues. To use sermons, to use congregation gatherings, to talk about environment should be used much more than it is used so far. And we have to address as well, we had a participant from the Interreligious Council in Kenya. I think the next step here in Bosnia would be to address directly from UNIP, from SIDA, to address directly the Interreligious Council in Bosnia and Herzegovina to make this a continuous plan in their activities. That's
fantastic.
It. So far.
Fantastic ending. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And yes, a big applause. And I see that you are looking at your documentation, and you did mention that you have a long list. I also know that in Sarajevo we are being joined by the service of translators as well, and I think that's a great also initiative and an effort. That's also in collaboration with the UN locally, making this even more accessible to the people who are active locally. But what I was going to say, and I know it might be a bit of an effort, but if possible, I think it would be fantastic if we could get some translation of your material, maybe some main points from Sarajevo, also posted up onto the Padlet platform. That could be fantastic, and I'm sure you'll sort that out together with Nicola and our focal points. So thank you for the inspiration from Sarajevo, and now on to and I'm going to ask the Härnösand crew to gather up here in a minute or in 5 minutes. But first, if we have our friends from South Africa, let's see who will be joining as rapporteur from Pretoria. Do we have someone who can make themselves known in the chat, for example? Or by...
You good?
Yeah, excellent.
Live, right? Yes.
So as close as possible to the microphone as well, if that is an option.
Yeah. Let him just move quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Your sound is fantastic.
Mine, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Morning, can you hear me? Clearly now. You just can't see him. Give me a second.
That's okay. No worries.
you want to come sit here? Okay, let's do it this way.
Yeah, that's okay.
Here we go.
All right. Sorry about that.
No worries. It's all good. Thank
Morning,
you.
guys. So I'm Tafara, and I'm from the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability, reporting live from Pretoria. Awesome. So yesterday, we had three panelists. We had Josephine, Cecilia, and Francesca. And we spoke of water. There's a water crisis here in South Africa and predominantly in the South. Also exasperated by climate change, the floods, the droughts that we have. So we speak of water, the water crisis. We spoke of gender, so like we're linking them up with the SDGs. When in Sunnyside, where I stay here in Pretoria, about 2 weeks ago, we had there's no water for 2 weeks. And when the Bowsers came, luckily we had Bowsers, it was only ladies and young girls who'd go collect water. So this affects people, this affects school attendance. So imagine in a situation where you have rural communities where young girls can't go to school because they have to collect firewood and collect water. So we need to look at these things and say, how can we address them? And then that's where, like we said, collectively, faith leaders need to come up and look for solutions. Water harvesting was one, where Cecilia from UNEP mentioned that where she's from in Kenya, they have water tanks. Every household, be it rural, high-density suburbs, low-density suburbs, they have water tanks, underground water tanks. It rains, they collect. So we need to go back to basics, and just not be dependent on piped water coming from the municipalities. We've got issues of corruption which affect parts of Africa, and that affects water. So we need to become self-reliant whilst we're at it. Water quality was also discussed, where people, Namibia in Southern Africa is the only country which is strong on water recycling. Socially, it's not accepted. Someone like, but that water is used to flush the toilet, and then you want to recycle it and need to drink it, so it's a bit of a misfit. So we also need to look at how society can accept it, societal acceptance of the realities of what we face. And then the economic use of water was discussed in industry and particularly farming. Like, can't we engage in drip irrigation technologies, invest more in that, drip piping, linking it up with waste management. We can recycle plastics and use that for drip irrigation technologies and infrastructure. And we need to reduce food wastage. Looking at food wastage, that's SDG 12. We're linking it up with poverty and hunger. How do you eradicate poverty and hunger? Then you've got sustainable consumption and production, which links with water, because we're focusing on water. So if our production systems are sustainable, we can save water and feed people. And then we didn't discuss the issue of health. Like, personally, I'm also a bit conscious about GMO food and the likes. And then Matilda from the International Labour Organization, she came and says, she was speaking like, though it's not related to water, but water affects labor in terms of industry, and a person who works, leaves home, needs water, goes to work, needs water for drinking, washing, cooking, and sanitary purposes. And she focused more like, let's look at green jobs. How can we create green jobs? For example, water harvesting is a green job. We can get jobs. We've got high unemployment rates here, and we can create jobs from that and have employment opportunities. So those are things we need to look at, and synergies. And to say that faith communities need to reach out. This was now from, I'm moving on to what Cecilia said. Like, how can, they've got the Faith for Earth initiative, and they want to create a conducive environment for faith-based organizations to participate and solve global environmental challenges, issues of floods, like advising people, don't build near floodplains. Then you can quote the Bible. Jesus says, there's a guy who built his house on sand, and then the floods came and washed him away. That's what we're seeing. It's no longer just reading what Christ said it's now reading it in the New York Times, all major global newspapers and stuff. And then the extinction of species. I heard someone, as a previous speaker, spoke about that. We've got extinction of wildlife trading, though we've got these laws. It's all interlinked. We've got a growing population, food shortage, water shortage. So we can't just talk about water and forget about food.
Thank you. Thank you. It seems like you've covered a lot of ground. And I wanted to just ask a quick follow-up question. I mean, you're really weaving the SDGs together here, it seems, around the theme of water. That's inspiring to hear and to see the interlinkages. Do you feel like yesterday you've already also come onto the concrete level, like the practical, or are you perhaps plunging into that today?
We're plunging into that today, but obviously we did touch up on practicalities. That's more of, as a people, organizing ourselves. The practical part is first organizing ourselves as a people. Yeah. That the bishop, like the bishop mentioned yesterday, he said, I asked, why are the youth not involved or included in this decision making? There's some with good ideas. And then he just asked a simple question: where are the youth? So it's organizing ourselves first, and then now look at practically how do we do it, sharing information and knowledge of seeing what people have done.
Okay. So. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing with us. That's also inspiring. And again, if there are indeed notes from the Pretoria sessions, it would be great to have some key points, and we could share that. We could get that shared through our facilitators in Pretoria as well. So thank you very much, and we will now be moving on to the contributors from Härnösand. And we would like actually a hand mic from up there. We have that right here. Yes. So if you come up. Yes. So actually, while we get set up here, we'll go to Nairobi. How about that? Our friends in Nairobi, are you ready to share with us? Okay, let's go with Härnösand. Here we come. Okay, back and forth. So let's see, just that we have the correct, we have the contributors from Nairobi, but now we're going to go to Sweden first here, and then we have our Nairobi friends ready to go in 5 minutes for their contribution as well. So here we go. What were the key points that you brought up from yesterday's?
Okay, so we started with a fun icebreaker where we all got a blue paper and the instruction to get inspired by SDG 6 on water. And the instruction was to draw a picture of how we conceptualize the nexus of faith and environment. And looking at the pictures, we can see various interpretations of the concept, yet they all carry a message of uniting for the sake of the planet. And what was next?
Yes, next we had a guest speaker, Magnus Valan, who is Senior Policy Officer at Diakonia. Where am I supposed to look? Oh, am I supposed to look here? Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry. At Diakonia, which is a faith-based development organization. And he's one of my main role models in advocacy, so I was very happy to listen to him. I think many of us were. And one of his main points was that you have to talk to people's hearts in advocacy. You cannot think that people will remember your PowerPoints. So put more effort into talking to people's hearts rather than putting together a nice PowerPoint. He said that we know we have to take for granted that aid is will always be unequal. So we need to do what we can to kind of improve the power structures in aid. And some advice he gave was to use, from the Diakonia experience, to use a rights-based approach, to search for core funding rather than cherry picking, rather than like supporting single projects, to ensure a gender analysis from the beginning, not just do the gender analysis as you go, but to implement it from the very beginning. To ensure that there is transparency policies, and kind of be honest that sometimes things go wrong in development, in aid, but to be honest about that. If it goes wrong like 1 out of 20 times, maybe that's okay. And to decentralize power to the local authorities, and that is something that Diakonia has done very successfully. And also to take advocacy in the North seriously. And then he gave some advices on tactics in advocacy. You have to be sure about your priorities. Before you ask for a meeting with a politician, be sure that you know what you should communicate to this politician. So he actually said that I'm not planning any meetings with any politicians until I know what I'm going to ask for this politician to do after our meeting. And encouragement is better than shaming. I think we all can agree on that. So start by actually telling this politician what he or she has done good. And talk to the heart, and don't focus on your PowerPoints.
Okay, and then the last session of our day, which was yesterday for us here in Sweden, was how faith actors, or the role of faith actors in climate negotiations. So in the UNFCCC COPs, Conference of the Parties. And that session was held by Henrik Grape, who is the chair of a interfaith liaison committee at the UNFCCC Conference of the Parties. And he talked a little bit about the role and the important perspective that faith actors and indigenous groups bring to climate negotiations. He told us a little bit about the backstory, and that the first sort of joint manifesto on climate and interfaith was written in 2008 in Uppsala. And then we sort of went through the Interfaith Climate Declaration that was written at the COP last year, so at COP 25, and discussed the different parts in that declaration. And after his presentation, we went into smaller discussion groups where we discussed really big questions, I think. And that was discussions about what narrative faith actors or indigenous people can bring to climate negotiations, and how that can be used to sort of strengthen the message. Yeah, I think that was the main...
The message. Excellent. Thank you so much. And perhaps a follow-up, just a super brief follow-up question is like, well, first of all, actually, I want to ask you to just state your name and your organizations.
Sorry, my name is Jonna, and I work at Islamic Relief Sweden.
My name is Sandra, and I'm from a Student Climate Association at Karolinska Institutet.
And my name is Eva Maria, and I work for Church of Sweden Youth.
Excellent. And okay, so what are you? What's kind of, where are you at in terms of what do you expect from all of this that you got yesterday? What are you eager to get to today?
I'm eager to learn new tools for communication and get inspired by groups of faith, because I'm not from a religious group, but I'm happy to learn new ways of communicating across all sorts of borders.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. You can take your seats again, and we will... Thank you. Yes, an applause. Very good. And now we turn to our friends in Nairobi. Take us away and give us a glimpse of what your discussions, what key learnings or key points that came out from your discussions.
Thank you. First and foremost, we'd like to thank you all because we are very blessed. We are in Nairobi, which is the headquarters of UNEP. Secondly, we have got a very passionate person, Dr. Iyad, who is very compassionate to our views, and he has really dedicated himself to environment. And we are the best example of interfaith youth right now. I am a Sheikh, a Muslim. My friend here is a Christian. So I think so far we have never had interfaith. We have done what we call welcoming the other. Under welcoming the other, long before even we knew about UNEP, we used to go to our places of worship. The first thing we did is clean up the area, even sanitize the toilets. After that, listen to the sermon, whether it's the mass or the khutbah. After that, now we plant a tree. The only thing is that we used to not grow the tree, just plant it, forget about it. So we have been doing environment since long time ago. Our friend Mr. Allen was yesterday talking about Sinesa, but I'm sorry to say Sinesa has not captured interfaith. And he was talking about leaders or faith-based leaders. Now, the impact that religious leaders have is far different from what a faith leader would have, because any environmentalist has a faith. So you cannot say that just because someone is a Christian or a Muslim, he can address the issues the way we religious leaders can. Because as a sheikh, I've managed to address environment from the pulpit. And people have started asking, oh sheikh, today you're not talking about spirituality, you're talking about not going to heaven, but making earth heaven. So instead of just talking about heaven, we are trying to make earth a heaven. So it becomes easier. And I would like also to appeal to UNEP and especially Dr. Iyad, because I've tried to go through some various websites, but because we as sheikhs and bishops and imams, we don't have the qualifications to get attached to UNEP under an internship. It will be better for them to approach us and take us as religious leaders, because environment education is not rocket science, but at the same time, you don't have the degrees. And at this stage, we cannot go back and study environment. So if you need us as religious leaders, we want you to take us up as interns. We learn what is needed to be learned. And from there now, the impact we will have as religious leaders will be far greater than what FBOs are doing. I've also reached out to Eco Islam and Mr. Fakhruddin in Indonesia. I've told them now to expand out of Indonesia and UK, because in Africa, I've tried to see how can we be part of Eco Islam. Instead of building another organization, how can we now become part of Eco Islam or Mr. Fakhruddin's team and now use the same ideas and impact, especially on interfaith. Last but not least, the Amazon fires and the Aussie calamities. I think UNEP should have had an independent team to go into the Amazon fires and the Aussie calamities and find out what is the truth. What exactly happens, instead of just waiting for from reports from the Brazilian government or the Australian government, because they will not give you the facts that you need. Already I'm in touch with UNEP. We want to implement things. Implementation means such that we want to form a logo that is eco-friendly. This eco-friendly logo will be on every product such that we force the producers to go eco-friendly. So that when a consumer buys a good, he will know, he will have the choice. Now for us to do that, we're already in touch with ISO, and we want also to contact the Dubai government so that we have an MOU with the religious leaders, UNEP, ISO, and the Dubai government, so that anything that passes through Dubai, because Dubai is the world, anything that passes through Dubai, if it's not eco-friendly, it is thrown out. So we sort of force the producers to go that way. Then I was also made the coordinator for the Interfaith Youth. All the other bodies, the religious bodies, Green Anglicans, Green Mantra, Eco Islam, Ecosystem, all of them came on board except Sinesa. I'm sorry to say, Sinesa is living in a silo. It's in isolation. It does not want to go into interfaith. So they've not captured that need. So we have formed the movement called Interfaith Global Youth Movement, which in initial we have branded as iGYM, a small I with GYM as capital. So iGYM now appeals to the youth, because the youth, when they go on the Twitter and try to find out what is iGYM, then they realize that we're talking about environment and we're not talking about gymnastics. I also work on the Laudato Si, because we are trying to form the Muslim and the Jewish version of Laudato Si. And we have found that Laudato Si, when it addresses religious issues, it concentrates on religion. When it addresses environment, it addresses on only environment. It does not intertwine them. It does not sort of join them. Unlike in Islam, whereby we not only have environment as part of our life, we practice it. When it comes to cleanliness and environment, it is there. So we as religious leaders should use the scriptures to address environment, not just become an environmentalist or a religious leader. We should try and intertwine them. And then now, I've been hearing my friend in South Africa speaking about water issues. He should have picked up mining, because mining is one of the most hazardous issues in South Africa. We have done a very deep research. We would like to share it with him. And we find that mining is one of the issues that have need. Last issue, just before I finish off, just recently I was in South Korea for the World Peace Summit. I met Mr. Ban Ki-moon. Mr. Ban Ki-moon is the one who started UN Environment and the SDGs. I'm already in touch with him, and through Dr. Ian, we will try and make sure we bring him on board, so that because through his influence, we can address the environment much more easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you from Nairobi. We'll just a follow-up question then to you, to our other friend in the room there. What are you most looking forward to like the next step in today's conversations?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Anthony Blaze. I am I'm a program officer with the Interreligious Council of Kenya. Moving forward. From yesterday, today, I want to hear more of actions that we are able to take. I want to listen more about the voice, us invoking the voice of God, the scriptures more in all this. I want us to challenge, moving forward, government policies that have ignored the voice of God to all this. That is what we need to discuss now, and to inform the world that it is no longer something we are asking. It is a must. It's a demand that we coordinate all these efforts. If we see that the CNESA, different groups are doing different things, we need from this summit to see all these efforts consolidated, so that we have one global movement, not people doing their own different things, so that we can amplify the impact. And so, because 10 years is here, 10 years, 2030 is just here around the corner. It's not time for us to do different, everybody pulling their own, doing their own things. It is time to pull all this together. This is what I want to see today, and looking forward for that. Thank you very much, Anthony, as well. I want to pick up on that, what you just said, and the sentiment that I heard both spelled out and a little bit between the lines. But something that was mentioned here that I heard yesterday was the idea of doing, like when we start to get to know each other as actors, it can be across this divide that you mentioned between environment actors and faith actors, faith-based organizations. When we start to open the doors for communication and new relationships, we might suddenly see that, oh wow, there's a whole new world out there, or a whole network of organizations that I know nothing about, and you can start, you can have different approaches here. You can, because the aspect that was brought up yesterday was the idea of, we could do like a mapping, like mapping where is my organization situated in relation to these other organizations and actors in this nexus of faith and environment. And that is an exercise that is absolutely, can be very constructive. Another way, or perhaps just a parallel way of working, is to go straight to action, go straight to collaboration, and pick up along the way what are the collaborations that are going to be fruitful in my context. What are the actions that we can do together that are, using synergies in our respective work? And then something that I've picked up along the way, just a simple mantra, is that action leads to inspiration. So once we start to act, we get inspired to take action on other things as well, and we gather momentum. So using a systems thinking approach to really
to situate yourself in a system, but living in the complexities that we are in this nexus as well, we need that dynamic, that tension perhaps of analyzing and acting at the same time. So with that said, and you know, having now kicked us off into the day, which I really appreciate all our contributors and participants from around the globe, I want to give a chance as well to one participant, and you know, we're gonna reduce the time extent, but one participant gets 2 minutes. Somebody who has been participating remotely, I would like to just pick up on someone's experience who has not been in the room with others, who's, you know, have had restraints to participate from where they may have wanted. So I'm just gonna open up for someone to write in the chat room. Write your name, and you can be unmuted and just have a 2-minute reflection, and then we're going to have a little stretching exercise. Do we have any people in the signing their name? Oh, we don't have a bank there. Is there any name coming up in the chat? Kelimo. So yeah, Bengt just walked into the room. He's the one who can unmute. So Kelimo, we're gonna just find you in the participant list and unmute your microphone, and we'll give you.
Hi. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. My name is Chelimo Njoroge.
Chelimo, nice
I
to
work
meet
with
you.
the Children Mission Africa. We have an organization also in Sweden, Born with UNEN, and our engagement here was largely introduced by the Swedish Mission Council. So it's been interesting and very dynamic to engage in this way. We had initially, I am in Nairobi, and initially we will be at the UN, but not cancelling and going ahead with this digital platform has personally taught me it's very possible, very timely in the coronavirus era, to meet and continue to engage even in such platforms. So my reflection from yesterday, there's so much happening. Some of the conversation that I had from participants in Kenya, I had them for the first time, and what organizations are doing. So I agree. Lack of coordination is a primary reason why we need to have these conversations. And it's in a global platform that I will hear of aspects and things targeting young people and faith institutions in Kenya. I have to take a back seat and ask, where do we begin? How can we have the local learnings, even here within the country, just to ensure that we don't have to replicate, that we can learn from one another, learn from whatever has been done, build on it, instead of starting and building it from scratch. So that is my greatest reflection, even as we get into this day. So coordination remains at the top of my mind, both for actors in country and actors globally in the faith and environment conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that contribution. I really appreciate that. And this will have opportunity, and that's why I really appreciate us doing this, as you mentioned, that we are going ahead and we are meeting across borders and boundaries. So in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by an esteemed contributor as today's keynote. And while we're setting that connection up, I think we all might use a little bit. We're talking about action, and we're talking about building movements. And so for me, the idea of movement it goes deep. Movement is a constant. Movement is happening inside ourselves all the time. And so I want to just encourage us to move around. We're all muted, or except for me maybe. I'm just going to loosen up my jacket here. So I want to encourage everybody, wherever you are in the world, if you're in front of your own computer, to just stand up. Stand up. We're going to build some movement here. And you're going to just move around a little bit. Yeah, stretch it out. Yeah, move your body. We are very complex systems, organisms, and okay, turn around. Yeah, do a little turnaround. And touch your back. And touch your shoulders. Touch your knees. And if you can, and dare, touch your toes. This is, I think, sometimes we forget this in the age of sitting in front of computers and screens. We forget that we are complex organisms and that we need activation. We need activation on the personal and physical level, as well as on the movement building globally. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our next session. This is also a very fruitful. As you know, there have been out of necessity needs to adjust in this situation. And we have adjusted in the program, and we are very thankful and honored to be joined. And I'm going to hand over to Josephine to this session, and take it away for us.
Yes, thank you to everyone who shared as rapporteurs. When we designed People and Planet, we said that it's about empowering and giving voice to people. So therefore, we must have a great space for everyone in this particular global dialogue to really share outcomes from each day. So thank you to everyone, and I'm excited to step into our second day. Yesterday, we started off with the decade of action, with only 10 years remaining for the 2030 agenda to be implemented. And our ambition yesterday was to move from a sense of urgency into delivery by adopting system thinking, normative dialogue, by broadening the space of actors that are invited in to act and to be not only to act on themselves, but to actually have influence in our joint effort to save our planet. And we also talked about some of the drivers for biodiversity loss, climate change, and how we can effectively turn the development around. Today, the theme of today is imagining a world in balance. And today we are going to move into the how question. So if we are to embrace a broader approach of actors, including faith actors, indigenous groups, and moral duty bearers, if they are invited in And if we start to imagine what impact that will have for our planet, what new approaches can be brought to our climate justice work and to our environmental work? Often, when we address development, we think in strict economic terms, or in terms of GDP, or in materialistic terms. But if we are to transform and to have a discursive turn, then we want, of course, to bring in social capital, cultural capital, and spiritual capital. And in this very turn and broadening, it is crucial to hear from faith actors themselves how they envision this world. So now I have the great, great honor to introduce our keynote for today, Reverend Kenneth Umtata, who is based in Zimbabwe and is acting as the Secretary General of the Zimbabwe Christian Council. He has a background as a prominent scholar with a PhD from KwaZulu-Natal University in South Africa. He has studied and presented and produced research on the religion and development nexus. So he's a global leading expert in that sense. But apart from being a prominent scholar, he has done the work on the ground, living and leading communities from the family level to the national level in Zimbabwe. So with these words, I would like to welcome you, Kenneth, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Josephine. I hope I am connected now.
We hear you perfectly well.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate being invited to be part of this very important and timely conversation. It is not possible for us to enter into this conversation without thinking about the situation we find ourselves in right now with the pandemic of the coronavirus and how it is disrupting the way we have been moving forward as the most dominant species on Earth. It reminded me a very interesting paragraph that I recently read from the book of Yuval Noah Harari. His book entitled Homo Deus, where he gives a brief history of tomorrow. And he says that with regard to other animals, humans have long since become gods. We don't like to reflect on this too deeply because we have not been particularly just or merciful gods. I think this is an interesting opening to my brief remarks here, that as we look at ourselves as human beings in the world, I think it is fair to say that we have long assumed ourselves to be gods. I know that I am using this religious terminology in a world where secular thinking does not accommodate very much such language. But the self-understanding of human beings in a hierarchical structure in which they are at the top, or in a secular arrangement in which they are at the center, I think is something that we should first come to terms with if we are going to live in a balanced world. Actually, in my reflections, I just want maybe to highlight three things that will need to be changed if we are going to make a meaningful contribution towards a balanced world. First, we will need to change the way we think about ourselves as human beings. Secondly, we will need to change the current structures of society. And third, we will need to change our habits and practices. And I think if we are going to change the way we think, we construe what it means to be human, I think one of the changes that will need to take place is to dethrone ourselves as gods. And therefore, we need to remove ourselves from the center, the idolatry in which we are participating in, where we think that the whole universe must only serve the appetites and desires of human beings. Now, we know that the desires and wants and needs and interests of human beings are possible to distinguish. And we unfortunately have turned upside down the hierarchy of these needs, interests, and wants. And the current dominant way of arranging the things that we desire has been to put the things that we desire and want even beyond the things that we need. For this reason, the way we participate in the economy is not driven first by the needs. That is our need for food, our need for accommodation, our need for relationships, our need for love. But it has tended now to be driven by the things that we enjoy and the things that give us instant gratification and fulfillment. Unfortunately, if we turn these priorities upside down, our priority only for enjoyment and entertainment tend to make us view ourselves only as consumers and therefore not as neighbors. Because if our existence is only to enjoy instant gratification, we view all creation as objects that must be enjoyed, that must be turned into entertainment and pleasure only for human beings. The problem is that if we follow that line of being, we will not only want to enjoy and objectify all creation, but we will also want to do that to other human beings that we dominate. And that will create an unbalanced world where other human beings can be viewed as objects for entertainment. So the first thing that has to change, the first conversion, I'm glad to be using religious language here. Yes. The first level of conversion that is required is the conversion where we dethrone human beings from being gods, but human beings become neighbors. They become neighbors with one another, and they become neighbors with the rest of creation. But in order to aid this conversion, they may also be need to put policies, to put rules, to put regulations, and to put structures that control the insatiable appetite for human beings to exercise this desire for being gods. In other words, human beings on their own do not have the capacity for self-restraint. Human beings on their own do not have the capacity to control their desire for consumption. We can see this from the way, for example, we consume food. We are getting statistics that every day about 8,000 children die from hunger. But we also hear that thousands and thousands of tons of food is thrown away from fast food shops, from restaurants, and from many other parts of the world where there is so much abundance of food, but there is not enough human beings to consume that food. You know, this is happening at a time when we have so much increased our capacity for logistics and for international distribution of goods. Companies like Amazon and many other such logistics companies have perfected their ways of distribution. But the reason why this food cannot be distributed to the areas where it is needed is because this distribution is not supported by the logic of profit. In other words, where there cannot be direct connection to profits, the natural preference will be to destroy such food. But if we are going to dethrone human beings as gods who are only driven by a desire for enjoyment and for profits, and we set up structures that meet the basic needs of all human beings, there is a possibility that actually we can turn the current efficiencies we have to meet all human needs. We have seen, for example, that many of these companies that have developed efficiencies in logistics have actually now moved from distribution to entertainment industry, because they can see that they can translate their efficiencies to entertainment. So we may need to introduce structures, policies that enable us to change our greed into service of need. And we think that it is possible if we change our policies. But last but not least is that we do not only need a conversion from being gods to be neighbors. We do not only need to have to change our structures of greed into structures of service to the neighbor. We will also need to change our habits and our practices. This will require that we change our desires and our habits of consumption, so that we are not only consuming under the influence only of enjoyment, but also to eat, consume in the understanding that we need to do so in a sustainable way. And I think this sustainable oriented form of consumption is a new habit that we will need to develop at a personal level, at a household level, at community level, at national level, but also at international levels. These habits, of course, others have already started by changing the types of food they eat. Others have changed by the quality of food they eat. But above everything, what it really requires is to bring in some habits that are no longer familiar to us, especially those who are living in secularized environments. This is where we may want to draw from our spiritual capital, from some of our ancient traditions. These ancient traditions have taught us that it is possible to deny ourselves certain pleasures. The habits we have from traditions, religious traditions, habits like fasting. If you are talking to some Christian traditions today, in this season of Lent, when they remember that human beings suffer, human beings will die, they also understand that human beings may need to deny themselves certain pleasures so that they bring back the created order into some equilibrium. And these habits of fasting and self-denial may require that we think very seriously about how we reduce consumption of power, electric power, by switching off the gadgets that we do not need to use, by changing the habits of how much meat we eat and replace it with other protein sources, and how much we change the way we travel so that we can have meetings like this one we are having right now. And this change of habits can be viewed from just personal habits, personal change of habits. But if we are going to bring back equilibrium and balance to creation, it must be viewed from the perspective of sustainability, of our own sustainability and the sustainability of creation. My contribution to this important conversation, Josephine and the whole audience, is that I am saying right now the world is not balanced because human beings have put themselves as gods above everyone else. And there is need for a conversion where human beings see themselves as neighbors. And this happens at a personal level, but it will need to be inculcated to the whole human race, and there is need for campaigns to change, to dethrone human beings from this high pedestal. The second thing is we will need supportive institutions, policies, and ways of structuring society so that we aid this new conversion. And third, there will be need to develop new habits. And these habits, I have given an example in which we can draw from different religious traditions that can support this new way of life. This is my initial input, but I realize that we are going to be having more input from other participants. And I believe that from these conversations, we can build a movement among citizens of the world who desire to contribute to a balanced world. I bring back to you, Josephine, and the moderators.
Thank you. Woo! Thank you so much, Kenneth. And your words will have a strong influence on all of us who are part of People and Planet, but it will also impact more people around the globe because this is live streamed on YouTube and we can share and spread this link around the globe. So your words will reach the public, the households, and the citizens of the world. I have a follow-up question for you, Kenneth. You are currently on the ground in Zimbabwe. You are the leader of the Christian Council in Zimbabwe. So we would like to hear briefly from the ground, how are faith actors and churches specifically in Zimbabwe responding to the climate crisis, the crisis of biodiversity loss, and the pandemic? And how are you as the center leader acting and responding?
Thank you, Josephine. You know, for one of the issues that we will need to realize is that even though the global south is not the main contributor to the pollution of the oceans, the pollution of the climate, of the environment, even though the contribution we are making to destroying the environment is proportionally quite low to the developed world. We are suffering the greater brunt of the climate change and the environmental crisis the world is currently facing. I think you'll be aware that recently we were dealing with the cyclone Idai, which saw many people lose their homes, their livelihoods, and until now we still have thousands of families that are still to be accommodated and who are staying in very uncomfortable makeshift homes. In a situation like this, you know, the coming of the corona pandemic is quite scary. Of course, what compounds the situation for us in our particular situation here in Zimbabwe is that the health system is dysfunctional, and therefore you do not have policies in place that will make sure that service delivery will cushion the pain of the people in the face of such uncertainties. And that's why faith communities are playing a very important role in making sure that communities are climate change resilient. Like right now, we have been working with communities in the rural areas so that they change their agriculture habits. You know, many of them have been used to regular rainfall patterns, but all this has changed now due to climate change. And because of that, there is so much high levels of food insecurity in this part of the world. And to try and mitigate this, we have been introducing what we call farming God's way. Farming God's way is to try and use the natural ways of conservation farming, in which people use the natural ingredients to maximize their productivity. This is to try and minimize the use of artificial fertilizers and try to make sure that the earth is able to replenish itself, and making sure that we use natural material that decomposes to keep moisture and to increase productivity. This is one intervention that we are making. We are also trying to enable people to use indigenous crops and small grain crops which are resistant to drought and which can help families to increase their yield. But on the other hand, we are also pushing on policy changes so that the government is responsive to the reality of climate change. You know that we had a said statement yesterday from one of our government ministers who said that coronavirus is a punishment to the developed world because of the sanctions that they have put on our country. And we issued a statement to reject that and other myths that are related to this kind of thinking. And because there are people who may end up thinking that climate change is a punishment for sins, and forget that climate change and many other hazards that are coming as a result of pollution of the earth are actually a result of human a lack of responsibility among human habits. And therefore, we have to change this thinking as well as changing our practices. Josephine.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. We will take good use of your wisdom and your input when we will now broaden the conversation to include a number of other prominent speakers and contributors in the panel. But thank you so much, Kenneth, and we will keep you in the global dialogue, so you are with us, but we will now broaden it to include other contributors. So thank you so much, Kenneth, and can we please give him a round of applause from around the globe? Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And now, yes, indeed, we are joining up with new contributors. And some of them, 2 of them will be joining us here, and 2 of them will be joining us digitally. Elizabeth and Abdel Rahman from Sultan from Jordan. Echo Peace. And yes, I'll join you in the sofa, but I will, yes, I will.
So we are talking about a world in balance and how we can work towards that. So as I said initially, we want to try out and move towards holistic approaches, which goes beyond a materialistic and economic thinking. And there we have lots of other capital to explore beyond the financial capital. And some of them are spiritual capital, social capital, cultural capital. So with us in this panel, we have 4 prominent contributors. And the first one, I'll get a chance for you to briefly introduce yourself, Jonna. You are working for Islamic Relief Sweden as an climate and environmental policy officer. And I'll get the chance for you to briefly introduce yourself. Yeah?
While I get some water for us.
Yeah. Yes, you will have a hand mic, which is there.
Excellent.
Hello? So maybe you can just let us know a little bit about your everyday reality within Islamic Relief.
Yes, so as Josephine said, my name is Jonna, and I'm working at Islamic Relief, and I work thematically with environment and climate there, both at a project level to mainstream those thematic areas into our project, but also a little bit on policy and more strategic work on that. And I don't know if all of you know about Islamic Relief, but it's an international NGO. We have our headquarters in Birmingham in England. And we work with humanitarian and development projects in about 40 countries. Yeah, so that's me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And our second panelist will come up on the screen. It's Elizabeth from Stockholm International Water Institute, Elizabeth Jari. And yeah, the floor is yours to give a brief introduction of yourself.
Okay, how's the sound in the room?
It's perfect.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Of course, I want to thank everybody. It's really exciting to be back here all today, complete lockdown where I am today. So please excuse if there's a distraction, children in the background. We're trying to keep them at bay. My name is Elizabeth from the Stockholm International Water Institute, and I'm a senior manager for the Transboundary Water Cooperation Department at SIWI. And I also engage with this water and faith space through our Swedish Waterhouse Cluster Group on water and faith. I think just to kind of frame my entry point, from the Transboundary Water Cooperation perspective, our process is really about understanding the diverse priorities and needs of different stakeholder groups and very much leveraging that approach around the water and faith intersect so that we understand the different needs and priorities of communities so that we can take this joint action that we're all looking for together.
And where are you currently based now, Elizabeth?
Today I'm in Tel Aviv, where I got stuck in the global situation. So yeah, it's exciting to be part of this important discussion here today.
Okay, thank you so much. And then we have Paula Grossman with us in our studio here, in our Learning Hub in Sweden. And you are representing the Jewish Congregation of Stockholm. Can you tell us a little bit of your background and your entry point to the nexus of faith and environment?
Okay, I'm very honored to be here. I'm just an individual. I'm not employed by the Jewish congregation, but I am very engaged in environmental questions, and I'm also a traditional Jewish person. So I seek to find my strength in my Jewish religion, to work as much as I can for the environment. So I have engaged in different venues and activities.
And you also work as a teacher.
Yes, I'm a teacher, but not in environment or biology. I'm a language teacher.
Wow. Thank you so much, Paula. And then we have our last contributor to the panel, Abdel Rahman Sultan from Ecopeace in Amman.
Yes, good morning, and thanks very much for inviting me to this panel. I'm very happy. We're sorry that we're supposed to have a big hub here in Jordan, but because of the circumstances in Jordan, it's not possible today. So I'm trying to be the only Jordanian. Actually, there's maybe one or two more joining this global session. So I'm very happy. I work at Ecopeace Middle East. I am an environmental engineer, and we're coming from a practical background where we would like to save the Jordan River that is shared between Palestine, Jordan, and Israel, between three different people. So we're coming a little bit, our focus is to build harmony between people and nature, creating peace, and faith is one of those overarching issues that we are addressing the environment with.
Thank you so much. So we will move back to you, Elizabeth. Are you still with us?
Of course.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So you have pushed globally a discursive change around SDG 6, which we have here actually. Clean water and sanitation, the right to water. And you have pushed for a discursive global change to incorporate more of social and cultural and spiritual dimension in how we are valuing water. So I would like to address a question to you specifically to ask, what's the background, what's the reason for that effort and work? And what do you see, I mean, in terms of when you try to change a discourse, you have to work at so many levels, individual level, household, community, policy level, government level, UN level. So how are you approaching change in this sense? And how are you taking this effort further?
Okay. Thanks, Josephine. So yesterday in the twinning discussion together with Amman and Pretoria, we had a little bit of time to delve into the reason why SDG 6 is so important to the entire Sustainable Development Agenda. And it sounds like in Sweden you also had a focus on SDG 6, which is really great. I think it's important to say that in the past, the water sector has developed a really robust literature around the economic valuation of water with less focus around the culture, spiritual valuations of water. So we really saw it as a deficit that needed to be addressed. And the reason why this is so important, of course, is what many of the speakers have already remarked upon, and that is that we require this all hands on deck approach in order to meet SDG 6 critical in the short time period that we have. And to do that, you really have to meet people where they are. And so understanding the different types of valuation of water is really part of meeting people where they are. And the idea, of course, is to make water champions out of all of us in this effort. So we find what is important to us and where those priorities overlap. So we engage in a process of cluster group discussions, which are really a dialogue process about enhancing participation and partnership towards a shared goal around SDG 6. Our Water and Faith cluster group, I think, is a really good example of this, and the conversation has really evolved. I think it's worth noting the different stages that we've gone to as we've reached out to different communities and worked to elevate these faith-based and spiritual and indigenous perspectives around the water sector decision-making processes. Initially, in 2016, when we first started this process, there was I would say, I mean, it's already a few years ago, but already there was a sense of why are we doing this? What added value is this happening? We bring all these faith-based decision makers to the discussion around water resource management. And there was when we first launched the effort, there was like a dissonance about it. Like, why are we doing this? But that very much evolved into how we can do this better. And initially, I felt that it was a little bit of an instrumental approach, meaning I felt from the water sector side of the discussion that they were saying, how can we better utilize faith-based networks and partnerships in order to get our messages across? And again, that was part of the evolution. And now I see much more of a two-way learning process where we work to understand the shared interests and needs across the community generally. And through that long dialogue process in which we engage each other, really seek to understand where is our neighbor, how they enter the water discussion, what are the different priorities and needs of different parts of the stakeholder communities and the diverse faith-based communities that we have at the table now, that it's really more about creating a common issue agenda. And that's the issue agenda, I think, is really essential in order to create that joint action. In 2016, when we first had a Water and Faith event at the Stockholm World Water Week, we had a speaker with us, Cardinal Turkson, who reminded us at that time that we are not going to have interfaith dialogue around water in Stockholm at the World Water Week. That's not the goal. The goal is really, what do we have in common? What are the shared priorities, and how we can take joint action together for this. And I think the conversation has really evolved to a point where we all, I think the sense in the room here as well is very urgency of action. Likewise, in our dialogue around water and faith, there's really this now move from agenda to action.
Okay, Elizabeth, I have a follow-up question for you. As Stockholm International Water Institute, SIWI, you are a secular actor working with innovative approaches towards faith and interfaith partnerships. Mm-hmm. What are some of the reactions you have come across when you have pushed for this approach, but being in fact a secular actor yourself?
Yeah, and I think this is this evolution of discussion that we have gone from this sense of why is a secular organization like SIWI trying to reach out and engage faith-based communities. That conversation, I think, is really completed, finished in a sense that that's no longer the question. The question is how we can better partner together. And one of the principles of inclusive governance is to get everybody to the table, to get all the voices around the table so that we can create this common issue agenda that lends itself to joint action. So while there was some kind of why a secular organization is working to have this like multi-faith, interfaith dialogue around water at the beginning, now I feel like that's no longer where we are at in the conversation. Now we are at a place where we understand we need inclusive participation as part of water governance in order to take these joint actions that are so urgently needed to achieve the SDG 6 and the full SDG agenda.
Mm. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. And I want to bring it down to also, bring it further also to the personal level. And Paula, I'd like to to ask you, from your experience, as you mentioned, you know, you are an individual, and acting in the as a community member, as a teacher, as a writer of educational materials, and inspiring also people with your teachings to a healthy lifestyle and healthy relationship with the environment, and also, as I understand it, with food. How can your perspective of bringing traditions and teachings in together with consciousness around environmental impact be inspirational for perhaps behavioral changes on an individual level and perhaps a community level in our daily lives? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I was very pleased to listen to Kenneth before. Some of these thoughts have rolled around in my head also, especially these days, of course. And I really have the feeling that we are forced, this is a signal, a warning, that we are forced to go back to our human side, as Kenneth said, and that we essentially are creatures as all other creatures on this planet, and what we need is water to live, water and food and shelter, and he also added love, of course. And he also mentioned the thing about we need to change our way of thought. If we don't transform our thinking, we cannot go so far. So, and the thinking will come out of our spirituality. And if we go back to each one of us goes back to our faith, or if it is religion or other kind of faith, we can draw strengths from that. And each person has his own or her own capacities. So each person will find from her abilities to do the best out of these thoughts in when you want to change. So I think each person can do a lot of things, and we each person can contribute. And my thing is I'm very much into food, so I like to cook, and this has been lately my way to contribute. So I have become a vegan, of course, and I act according to my Jewish principles also, my Jewish principles of that are common to many faiths. And I also want to inspire other people to eat less meat or stop eating meat. That's one of the things I'm doing. And then I try the best to do different things that I can.
Fantastic, and I really like that linkage to the context that Kenneth talked about as well. And I love food also, and I think we probably share that, a lot of us. What would you say that, like, what are the possibilities? I mean, we have so many images or kind of inspirations of like breaking bread, like all those symbolic acts that include food. What would you say, like from a Jewish tradition or from your inspiration with food right now, what are the potentials of using food as a force of change?
Well, everyone needs food. So we go back to basics. You know, when we see a crisis like this, people are going to the stores and hamstering food. It's so essential. And when you think also about, you know, how much food do I need, you start thinking, you know, to be a good neighbor, as Kenneth said, and how much food do I actually need myself? Will I be, you think, you know, in Sweden now, okay, if things worsen, will I be prepared to take from my food at home that I have to give to my neighbor? So we each have to go back to ourselves, to our individual level. I don't know if I answered your question.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So
thank you. We will now, you can hand it over to Jonna. So Jonna, you, as you told us earlier in the panel, you are working with Islamic Relief and within specifically environment and climate. And I would like to elaborate on the how. So how do you effectively use faith as a principle and faith leaders within global Islam and faith writings and teachings and Holy Scripture and the Quran to mobilize and to push for change and to also come across, I mean, attitude and behavioral change? Could you elaborate on that how? Because we all want to dig into and see how you approach this.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try. So I think that we work, because we work both at an organizational level, right? So we are an organization working in humanitarian aid, and we really see how climate change is affecting on the driving humanitarian needs. So we have a climate change policy, which was launched in 2019. And in that policy, there are lots of examples from writing, Islamic writings, from the Quran, Islamic principles that are used to sort of motivate and strengthen the message of the urgency and the responsibility that we have to work with climate change. And I think that is maybe a strength that value-based organizations have, because working in the organization, you're already agreed on these core values. And if you use them and just translate them and apply them to, in this case, the issue of climate change, it's really easy for all of us to understand it and to sort of, also apply that to our work. So that is one example, I think, of how it can be used to sort of strengthen and motivate a standpoint that an organization have. And we also try to do it in Sweden, because I was thinking about it when we talk about consumption and how we live, and these are some examples of what is also written in this policy, that Islam, for example, but I'm sure other religions as well, are sort of a power that are trying to raise other values that are not materialistic, but maybe more important values that we need to focus more on. And we here in Sweden and in other parts of other countries in this part of the world really have to work on our consumption, and we have to change our behavior the most, I would say, to reach all of these goals. So we also worked a little bit with imams here in Sweden, so that they can, in their, like maybe during Friday prayers, talk about climate and have that as a theme. So, because we also have to do our job here at home, right? Yeah.
And that is actually a movement that I've read about currently in global Islam, is to green the mosques, to think about how to use energy more efficiently and in a more sustainable way, and to use this is not only within, of course, global Islam, but in many faith movements around the globe. Now you shared very, like, in a positive sense, saying that you see this mobilization happening and you are working with local imams and you have a great policy. By the way, the Islamic, the policy on environment from Islamic Relief will be posted, or is already posted on the Padlets, if you want to look at it, all of you around the globe. But what I want to ask you is also, what are some of the challenges for you? I mean, of course, we understand that lots of good change is happening, but what are some of the challenges you have to tackle along the way?
Well, I don't know if you mean here in Sweden or if you mean like both in our projects, but I can take one example from Pakistan, because I talked to them on Friday when I knew I was going to be here, and they are working with advocacy on climate change and using religious leaders there. And we talked about all the positive things that have been mentioned by many others, that, you know, they are mobilizers and they have a big audience and they speak with a language that the communities are familiar with, and that so that they can really receive the message. But they also said that there is a challenge, because working with religious leaders, you have to have trust from them. Like, they have to trust the organization, right? And you have to find these common issues that that the previous speaker was also talking about. And I think that's a challenge. So it's not only to say, like, yeah, we're going to work with religious leaders now, and then you go and do it. But you have to build a common stand on issues and a common, you have to trust each other and to have, meet each other, I think, before you can start working. So I think that's one challenge, and it's important to keep in mind.
And I think this nicely connects your input with Elizabeth when she said we have to also be careful so we're not becoming too instrumental in trying just to utilize or take use of faith leaders, but actually to enter a more of a holistic understanding and embracing a faith language rather than just instrumentally take use of faith leaders. So thank you for that.
Excellent. I also want to pass sort of that question or that comment on to a question to Abed. I'm wondering, although the really hard and concerted work that you are doing in EcoPeace Middle East, how can you tell us a little bit about how faith within environmental activism can constitute a platform for reconciling and deepening the commitments and action for the right for a healthy environment for all?
Thank you very much. Actually, can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Excellent. So we at EcoPeace, we're working together as Jordanian, Palestinian, Israelis, that we have conflict here. Some of us within the country, we have either Muslim or Christian or Jews in the same country, and we have this deep lateral divide between the different ethnic groups or the different religion. So the basic issue that we wanted to do is to create trust between the different people in order to be able to achieve what we wanted to achieve. We looked at how can we bring Palestinian, Israelis, and Jordanian together, but we also looked how can we bring the different society elements, and in this case, Muslim, Christian, and Jews, to think about the ecosystem together. So we hold a number of meetings where Muslims and Christian and Jews spoke about the importance of saving the ecosystems from their own religion. And that was an eye-opening to see that we share so much in terms of religion. Now, when we understand that three religions are actually driving us towards the same objective, but what is the problem? Why we're not doing that? So we need to depoliticize the environmental protection and go back to the basic religion request from people to be clean and neat and protecting their water and environment. And this is where we started to emphasize on people working in the religion domain, being imam, rabbis, or priests, to say, okay, how can we create a momentum within our society to protect our nature, not only alone, but together? with the others. So we created a number of toolkits that helped everyone to look at environment from his own perspective. In doing so, we were able to bring more trust to the system, that we live here together. And today we suffer from climate change, we suffer from water shortage, we suffer from corona together. And it does not differentiate between which person, which nationality, and which religion. So we are all in the same boat, and it's a rough sea. That's why it's very important to see how can we all together create bondages and to understand where the connection can be made, especially on the bringing religion toward saving the environment. As you mentioned in your question to Elizabeth about atheist groups trying to save the environment, and or a secular group trying to save the environment. They also have a core value that we should all live in a healthy environment, healthy habitat. So basically, as a human being, whether we are religious or not religious, we all share the same core values of being helpful and being proactive towards our nature.
Excellent. Wow. Thank you. And it's truly inspiring to follow your examples from the action, the on the ground projects that are happening, that are both driving a positive environmental impact, and as well as an interfaith collaboration in practice. So that's a true inspiration.
Yes, and now we would like for all the four of you to give some sort of summarized short concluding thoughts and as panelists, and there we encourage the four of you to pick up something that insights you gained from other panelists, and you can also, as we already have heard, reflect also back to our keynote, Kenneth and Tata, but we will mostly in this concluding round focus around your contributions in the panel. So give us a short final remark quickly, and tell us of new angles and thoughts that you have gained from the conversation. And we will start with Elizabeth from Stockholm International Water Institute.
Great. So inspiring to hear from all of the other panelists. Thank you. I think it's really a challenge on us to move from awareness about our different perspectives to a consultation with each other, to really a space where we're making decisions together. And that's a process that requires dialogue and consultation, and it can take time. So yeah, but I think it's a worthy endeavor to move towards a much deeper participation and partnership. I think in the water sector, we should all be aware that this is really going to take center stage next year, when the water community will focus on valuing water for the World Water Development, for the World Water Week, the World Water Day. This is a discussion that's inviting a lot of contributions from faith-based communities, indigenous perspectives, and many others to share and understand this value in water. So I think the people in this room are a huge asset to this conversation. So I look forward to learning more. It's not easy to think about, we're used to, it's even easier for us to think about the economic valuation of water because we can put some numbers to it. We can do quantitative assessment. This requires cultural, spiritual, capital valuation. It requires us to move beyond that, to take into consideration a lot of different, discussion-based valuation. And it's a challenge for all of us, but it's a worthy endeavor. And I think we have so much to learn from the climate action and the climate change process, who have long been engaged with faith-based partnerships and working to make sure that indigenous perspectives are very prominent in those kind of dialogues. So I think we have a lot to learn from that. We don't have to start over, rather we can expand that partnership to really include the entire SDG agenda.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And we'll move on back to Paula.
Okay. agree with Elizabeth, and I think this to find common grounds is very important, to see that each of us, even though we don't agree on everything, we have things in common and we can act commonly. Like, for instance, EcoPeace, and just as an example of the work of EcoPeace, of a common ground, is the Jordan River. So one of the projects of EcoPeace is, for instance, to have Christians and Muslims and Jews act together to cleanse and to restore the Jordan River, and to find these targets that you can do together that will also build respect and understanding among us. And I'm thinking here in Sweden too. I mean, we almost lost our indigenous minority, the Sami people, but we need to take from them, for instance, how we act towards our northern part of the country, how we act towards nature.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, let's take Jonna here as well.
Okay, well, that's exactly what I wanted to say as well. That it's really inspiring to see examples of how interfaith collaboration and relationships can be built when working on a thematic issue like clean water or climate, and that these collaborations also have an added value in themselves, that we build relations between different religions and such. So I was really inspired by that, by EcoPeace and by what CIWI is doing as well.
Thank you. And Abed, your reflections from your perspective on the what's been said in the panel.
I think I have two main buzzwords. One is solidarity, that we should all again work together and unite. And this is something that, despite where we're coming from, actually I learned that the faith groups, actually they have lots of faith, and we need to learn from them. That this is something that keeps us going forward. Sometimes we lose faith on the way, and this is something that we need to keep ourselves. The second thing, which is responsibility and seeing different small actions, like how we behave, how we eat, how we change our behavior, can make all that big difference for the globe. And this is something that we should emphasize, that we should enjoy eating, and we enjoy living and enjoy our life, and with positive vibes. So we need to think again, how can we make this nexus as a full engagement between the classical mainstream environmentalism, and also with the people beliefs and the feelings and so on. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all panelists. If you as a participant in the People and Planet have specific questions to the contributors in the panel, you can write them on the Zoom chat and submit them. And for those who are, for example, in the Swedish Learning Hub, you can also do so. And then you will be directly connected to the panelists who are remaining in the global Zoom meeting. Now it is soon, not Zoom, but soon, time for our exciting global open space. We have postponed it 15 minutes, so it's going to start 10:45 instead of 10:30 Swedish time, ETC, Europe Central Time. So it's now 20 minutes left until it will start, and we will have 8 parallel sessions that will take place at the same time around the globe, and each of the 8 sessions have a unique Zoom meeting address and a specific facilitator for each session. So what's important for everyone around the globe is to realize that once we close up now, you close down the global Zoom meeting, and you re-enter at 10:45.
And
The specified Zoom meeting for each of the open space sessions.
well, actually, what we're doing is, and if I can have the PowerPoint shared there as well. What we're doing is that everybody who's joining digitally and everybody in this conference can you visit the Padlet page that's called SIDA SPF/OpenSpace, and we will send that link out in the chat as well, so that you can click it directly and view what the different sessions are. There are 8 different topics that are being hosted, and first of all, we have some information. So I'm just gonna take that quickly. What we're proposing is that we kind of combine, you know, taking our leg stretch and a cup of tea or coffee or water along with us into our digital open space. So everybody who will be hosts for the open space will start connecting to their specific Zoom meeting link shortly, so that they're ready to be gathered by participants at around 10:45. And those who are assembling in here, and also for you at home, take some time between now and then to just go through the sessions that you want to attend, and then to click into that specific link. That is going to enable you to come into a new room, and in that room you will be joined by the host for that specific session. The way that open space works is, for those of you who've done it in real life, or for those of you who've never heard of it, is that there's a few guiding principles. One of the primary ones that I like to always get to is, you know, we in our world of effectiveness and you know, getting things right, we want to control things a lot, oftentimes. Here in open space technology, in this methodology, we say that whoever shows up is the right people. So the people who, you know, it may be we have 8 sessions. We're not seeking an even divide among all the sessions. If everyone wants to join one session, then that's the right people. That's, you know, that's the right group. And there's another principle that says whatever happens is exactly what was supposed to. So, you know, if that does happen, that everyone joins into one meeting, then maybe, yeah, there's a reason for that, for particular types of conversations to be had. So we're not, again, we're not seeking a particular division between sessions, or a particular outcome for the session. The discussion happens as it should, and what we do encourage is that there is interaction, and that participants as well as hosts are respectful to each other, and utilize the fantastic tool of listening, because you might find out something new from someone else, and also step up to speak if you feel moved to speak, but share the space with others.
And we have 2 more things in terms of guiding principles, is that we should all use a headset or headphones with mic when you speak, I mean, from your respective device. If it's whatever, iPad, phone, smartphone, but make sure you put on your headphones, each of you around the globe, because that will give us the best quality of sound and voices. And also I wanted to say, for those of you who are currently in Sarajevo and you need translation, we have created a translation for one of the 8 sessions. So
that is the session led by Danya Bergman. And let's see, Andrew, do you know which session number that has? I believe that it might be number 1. Yes. So Danya Bergman will be hosting session number 1, and that will be...
Yeah, faith and biodiversity.
That'll be
so
translated.
we recommend for Sarajevo, if you need translation, join session 1, faith and biodiversity. And for the rest of you around the globe, you're free to choose the one you prefer. And here in the Swedish Learning Hub, we offer some coffee now before you move to your space for open session. I hope and wish for all the rest of you in learning hubs and at home that you can grab a mug of coffee or tea or water or something else, and then we reassembly, but in specific open space sessions at 10:45.
And after that is in exactly 1 hour, in exactly 1 hour, we should be gathering back into the Zoom link for the global session, because that's when we're going to hear from the other open space sessions what was discussed in theirs.
Yeah, so once your open space session is ready, come back to the global meeting in Zoom. Okay.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Vi är inte live än, eller? Okej. Då har du 1 sekund att sätta dig, Ola, så kör vi sen. Andrew kommer med dokumenten till oss. Eller så tar vi det sen. För jag tror vi ska börja nu. Ola, vi kör live nu. Är vi live? Yes, we welcome you back to the global Zoom meeting. It's been an exciting opportunity to move around, as I have done digitally, to see some of the important conversations that have been held around the globe. So the purpose now of this global roundup session is for us who have been in a particular open space session to get a sense of what have been the key outcomes from the other sessions. So we are going to move around, and totally, as you know, we have been divided into 8 open space sessions. So we will revisit the different groups, digital groups around the globe. And the first group we will visit will be Session 1, Faith in Biodiversity. And I will hand over the word to Danya Bergman, who herself is based in Bonn. And she's... Okay. We are live on YouTube. Excellent. Okay. We are live on YouTube, but we are not yet live in the Zoom meeting, where many of our conference participants are waiting for us. So we ask you, Andrew, you can't see this, someone can write on the Zoom chat that we are going live in the Zoom meeting in 1 minute.
I will write it on the Zoom chat.
And for anyone watching us live stream on YouTube, it's great to have you with us, and we're starting in 1 minute. Okay, we're in. Hi, everyone.
Almost.
Okay, we are back in the global Zoom meeting, and it's been really, really exciting to revisit you digitally and to move around and to see some of the important conversations that have taken place around the globe. Now we are back and we are reassembled to get a sense of the key outcomes from each respective open space session. And we will first revisit Session 1, Faith in Biodiversity. And I will hand over the word to Danya Bergman. Herself, she's based in Bonn, but many of our participants have been coming from around the globe. And
what we're going to do in this global roundup is to have one key point or insight from each session, each of the parallel open space sessions, and that's a big challenge to you all. But you've had the fruitful conversations in the groups, and you will take that with you into the rest of the conference. And so, please, can we get one key input outcome from Danya and Session 1? Or is there somebody else from Session 1 who is eager to... maybe it's just that Bengt needs to unmute somebody.
Yeah. Soon, Danya, we will invite you in, and here we are to invite you, Danya. Danya Bergman, please unmute. Okay, Danya, please unmute. Can be.
All right. Let's see if we can indeed connect to with Danya. Might it be that they have not found their way back into the global?
So what we will do is we will move on to session 2 and come back to session 1. So session 2 is framed eco-theology. And we have the facilitator for the open space session, Petter Jakobsson, with us. I hand over to you.
Thank you. It seems like we just started a big conversation after the initial input. But what I'd like to share is that we need to make theology contextual, we need to listen to a lot of different people. I think that's basically the summary. Both our own traditions, but also from a lot of different people.
Thank you very much for that concise summary that we'll bring it with us. And
can I just say before we move on, Petter, that I revisited your session, and when I came into it, I heard that you were discussing also regional perspectives on eco-theology, and you had a comparison between a European and an African perspective, and I thought that was really enriching to hear. So I hope that discussion will also be nurtured and come back to the global session later in this conference. Now we move on.
Yes, so the session 3 with the title Introduction to the UNFCCC's Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples Platform. Do we have somebody from that session that can give us one or two insights from what you shared?
Yeah, I was hosting that session. I'm Tiffany from the UNFCCC Secretariat, and I can share
Welcome,
that.
Tiffany. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us and allowing us also to be part of this great practice, this great training. What we can share, I mean, it was quite an in-depth discussion, but basically it was about how Indigenous peoples and local communities have a way of living with nature that is often very harmonious and sustainable. And integrating those views into climate change policy and action is critical if we want to be able to meet the goals that countries have committed to. For instance, to get to temperature rise as close to 1.5 degrees as possible below pre-industrial levels. If we want to be on track to meet those commitments, we need to integrate the views and holistic positive values of Indigenous peoples into the climate change process. In the discussion, that's the one point. I know we're not only allowed to have one point, but I'll just to say that some of the people also mentioned the need for capacity for engagement, right, between Indigenous peoples, local community representatives, and government representatives. And this is a two-way kind of capacity that's needed. So it's not just the capacity of Indigenous peoples to engage, but the capacity of governments to engage with them to make climate policy better.
Thank you so much. I see now that we have Danya Bergman with us. So could you give us one of the, like a main point that was discussed or a main insight that you shared?
From session number 1, Faith in Biodiversity. So the words is yours, Danya.
It's critical if we want to be able to.
Yes, we have you, Danya.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, yeah, I can hear you now.
Excellent. So would you give us one main outcome or key point message that was discussed in your session 1, Faith in Biodiversity?
I have to confess that we didn't make it to a broad discussion. Maybe I took a little bit too much time to get into the complexity of the project I was presenting. And I think that is one of the focus points also related to the People and Planet event, that we are in the core of complexity, actually dealing on different levels, like multi-stakeholder, scientific, spiritual, qualities, bringing together under one roof, and with a very sometimes uneven power relations. We have to be very aware of, we are also when we are implementing projects, also on the position of a certain power, and we are aiming towards a certain equality. So it's all about complexity and also diversity, and when we take it positive.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And then we are moving to session number 5, which is entitled creatively Eat, Pray and Love. And I see that Anna Emelin and Johan Järpe, the two facilitators, are eager and ready to share the outcomes of the session. So I hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciated to talk to very experienced people, and wish that we could have done that for longer. But if I should say just one short message from our conversation is that faith-based organizations has a very important role to simplify the message of the big change that is needed, the transformation that we need to go through to come in dynamics where we're creating sustainable food systems, because it's both complicated message from science, but it's also changing. I'm moving from being gods to being neighbors. That's disconnecting and starting new relations, and many farmers belong to faith-based communities. Also, many farmers are bad guys in the narrative. Like, it's a lot of blaming on farmers that they've done the bad things to the environment. And also there is a lot of young people who might not think that farming is so cool, but at the same time they want the knowledge to know how to grow food, and they want to contribute meaningfully. So there is an opportunity to bring young people into farming. And it's because it's an aging population.
Thank you. That's a very concrete step as well. So the next one we want to check in with is session number 7, Expressing Shared Values in Faith. Paula Grossman, are you with us?
Use the same.
Yes, excellent, thanks.
Okay. We had very fruitful discussions among us. We discussed some religious principles, ideas, and investigated how it is expressed in the different faiths. And the principles was not to waste. How not to waste? How is that expressed in the faith? And compassion to animals, and to let the land rest. So it will give us sustainability in generations to come. And we discussed this. I will not repeat what we said, but I want to convey to you something that our friend from the Baha'i faith shared with us. Because we are talking that humanity is actually not so old when we think about the planet, and we have been the time now that we have been in existence. It's not so long, and we have come to a certain point of learning only, and now we have to relearn. And our friend Anil said that you can see it as that humanity has come to an adolescent stage, and now we have to enter the grown-up stage. So we have to learn now. We have to relearn. We have shown our strength. That is why we think we are gods, and we are the Anthropocene stage, and now we have to. So it's very exciting. It also gives me hope that, okay, we can now go into a more mature way of acting to be in balance. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you
we
so
will
much.
actually be hearing more of that tomorrow. So
Yes, and now we will move to session 8, which I personally think is one of the most important conversations that was held. It is entitled Digital Conferencing in a New World Era. And the New World Era is referred to due to the current pandemic and the fact that we all need to transform and to move into digital conversations, dialogues, and conferences. So I hand over to Bengt Littorin.
Thank you.
I think that we agreed on that. Yeah, is mic on? That we agreed on that what's lacking is not just technology, it's very much knowledge. And we started to share about that and also looked at what could be problems in that. And one thought that struck me now is that, of course, we didn't reach the goal at this stage. But what I think of is, and I will leave that to Josephine, if we should try to arrange in fairly short time, in the context of this conference, workshop in working with digital meetings, let's say in 2 weeks or something, because it's urgent to get the knowledge out and experience out. And I think I would be able together, at least together with you, to arrange something like that for those who are interested, or at least a few of them who are interested at the time.
Yes, thank you for making that suggestions. And I mean, I can say on behalf of the Swedish International Development Agency that because of the fact that we are working innovatively with digital meetings and conferences, we have received a lot of wishes and requests for a capacity building event in few days to come, or as you said, in 1 or 2 weeks to come, and to offer it as live streaming and participation over Zoom. So we will look into this and we will try our very best to make it happen. And as you suggested, Bengt, I think it's very suitable to use this conference, People and Planet, as a base for such a capacity building event. And then we could potentially extend and open it up to other participants as well. So we'll work on that and we'll be able to confirm as soon as possible.
I think that sounds like a very inspiring initiative and a concrete outcome from this conference as well. I want us to also visit session 6, Speeding Up Sustainability Through Faith. Helena Lindemark, you hosted that session together with esteemed friends. Can you unmute yourself and give us a key message from your session, please? And if not, it seems their image is frozen. Do we have Iyad still online, or have you had to leave? No, you're still there. So Iyad, would you be able to just give us one key outcome or message from your discussion? Thank you.
Right. So we are, as everybody knows, we are facing a global crisis, whether it is the pandemic, whether it is climate change, whether it is ecosystem destruction, and so on. But also we have great opportunities in 2020 to 2022, 2020 being the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and 2022 being the 50th anniversary of Stockholm and UNEP. The issues that have been discussed is how to mobilize the power of faith-based organizations, faith leaders, and faith communities. And indeed, it is important to partner with faith-based organizations because they have been engaged for many centuries in responding to poverty issues and so on. So the most important part is how to bring them to the decision-making table, how to integrate faith and the environment into the global resolutions and decisions adopted by intergovernmental organizations. Therefore, it is not only initiatives here and there that we can mobilize and holding conferences, but also making them contribute to value and ethical based resolutions that can contribute to solving environmental issues. Certainly, faith organizations have the traditional knowledge of adopting nature-based solutions, which the entire global community now is working on. So working together is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll continue to come back to that. And we will also make sure that we post on the Padlet platform all the relevant upcoming processes and also meetings, because we had the input earlier today, this morning, earlier today, that the risk with having the single event. We need to indeed twin together and weave together our efforts. So thank you for that.
So now I will go through some final concluding instructions for the rest of today and for this global open space. And the first I would like to ask is for all of you who have acted as facilitators for an open space session to summarize your key outcomes in a document, upload it in PDF format on the Padlet, so that everyone can also download these PDF files and take action. So what I would like you to do when you formulate your respective summary is to have two sections. One is the key outcomes, and the second is action points. So how can we collectively in People and Planet take action from your outcomes? So outcomes and action points. And you will decide, each of you, if you want to formulate this in 5 sentences or in 1 page. But 1 page is maximum. So no longer than 1 page.
And just as a practical note, where you will post it, you should be able to, in the open space Padlet, to just click below in your column, to click a plus sign below the posts that are already there and add a section where you can paste in text or attach a document.
And if you have questions on how to post your respective reports with outcome and action points, you write your questions on the Zoom chat in this global meeting, and Andrew, our Zoom moderator, will directly give you support over Zoom in the global meeting. Okay, I have some other final instructions. Soon we will be ending the global gathering of today, and we will move into the twinning sessions. So we will be divided in 3 conferences. Before we do that, I want to just stress that for tomorrow's global session, we will once again need the rapporteurs from each country. So whenever you have ended your twinning session and your country session, this afternoon or tonight, remember to appoint the rapporteurs for tomorrow's reporting. And remember also, when you exit this global meeting, that you follow after lunch the instructions to join back into the Zoom meeting for respective twinning session, which will be held after lunch. And for Indonesia, this will be done differently due to time zones. I want to also remind you on our hashtag for social media, People and Planet, it's important that we really influence other actors, stakeholders, and people around us with the messages that are spread in People and Planet event. So make sure that you repost, retweet what are insights. So with those instructions, I would like to thank you all, and in particular, I would like to extend our thanks to you as organizers of the open space sessions. We highly appreciate, as organizer of People and Planet, that you have taken your time to plan, design, and to lead and moderate the open space sessions. So we are excited to see you all back in our last day tomorrow in the global session. And we also wish you best of luck in your respective twinning session this afternoon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again shortly. Bye.